Hi, my name is Andrew Stocken and this is my submission for dat5003, which is a presentation which focuses on creating a project that answers a professional and business question which aids Airbnb using data from three cities: Amsterdam, Barcelona and London. So first we had to create a business question. Now, what I noticed upon exploring Airbnb was that their negative reviews actually created some newsworthy stories. And this showed me the power of negative reviews and how this can affect the reputation and livelihoods of companies. To the point where platforms actually need to consider and focus on these low scoring listings and reviews. So this is where I wanted to start my question. So I formed the question: is there any noticeable factors that contribute to a low score, and how does this correlate across cities of London, Barcelona and Amsterdam? This was because of the data set that I had, and also again to try and pinpoint exactly what causes a negative review so that we can avoid incidents like those news stories there. I also wanted to focus on review scores of 2.5 or less, as this would be anything varying from low average to abysmal, as the general ranking of the scores are up to 5 stars. By doing this and focusing on this question, I'm hoping that we will be able to improve listing standing and the reputation of Airbnb listings, which in turn will create more attraction to these locations, thus increasing profitability and reducing any kind of complaints and any payouts that may come out of these complaints. So the question that we asked was very open-ended, and actually what we needed to do was focus on narrowing down exactly what are these notable factors. So the first thing we did was using the review commentary, we created a word map that would pick out the most commonly used words in those reviews, focusing on only the listings with those scores of 2.5 or less. This then produced 3 key words: the host, the place, and the room. These were obviously our areas that we wanted to look into, but we only could look into one. So I decided to look into room, as I felt that this would correlate most with our data that we already had. So we decided that we needed to change the question to reflect this change. So do rooms have a major effect on review scores? And does this effect differ between the 3 cities? So to conduct this data and further research, we ran some heat maps on the data that we had to try and pinpoint if there was any correlation between room data and the reviews. But as you can clearly see on the heat maps on the left hand side, the top left and the bottom left, the top right and the bottom left, there are no correlations, which is shown in blue, and the only correlations that we can actually see is the red, which is correlating with itself, thus proving that there is no correlation between the reviews and the room. Now, in the bottom right hand corner, we do have an anomaly, which is Amsterdam, which looks like it's correlating with absolutely everything. But when we looked into this, there is only 4 negative reviews conducted for all the properties in Amsterdam. What this basically entails is that each of those 4s has a 25% weighting for any kind of correlation, which massively skews the data, creating correlations that would not normally exist in London and Barcelona. So this had to be ignored. Because of the lack of correlation caused by the heat map and the word map not producing any seemingly leading us down the rabbit hole, we had to once again change it and change the question. And it made us question the actual validity of that word map, since it led to zero correlation. So I wanted to check manually if there was any negative commentary, and what I actually found was some positive commentary against these negatively scored locations. So it seemed that the sentiment of these comments were a little bit off, and thus made me question, are the words that are coming up actually relatable to negative scores? So we created a new question of, can the sentiment of visitor comments be an accurate gauge on prediction if a listing will be negative? To do this, we decided to run a sentiment analysis using VADA. From this, we could try and score each comment using the keywords that it would use, such as good, bad, and it would give a positive or negative score. From this then, we can overall determine whether a comment is overly positive, neutral, or negative. Now with these low scoring listings, you would assume that the overall commentary analysis would be negative. And you can see by the graphs on the right hand side, coloured green, yellow and red, that this is the case. But what seems quite worrying is the fact that there is such a high number of positive and neutral, and when those are combined together, seem to total up as more than the negative number of negative comments. What this is essentially saying is that these negatively scoring areas, over half of them seem to actually not be negative, have negative commentary, which is a bit strange. So we decided to run a scatter graph to see exactly how this maps out, and if we could try and identify some clustering of data to see if there was any kind of patterns. And as you can see on the right hand side, unfortunately, there seems to be no correlation between the sentiment of a comment and the review score, as you can see with the straight right lines between scores 1 and 2, and the even distribution of anything above 2 and below. Now there is a very slight clustering at scores of 1.5 being generally in negative, but this seems insignificant compared to the majority of the data, and it also again seemed to be only focused in London. This then made us question, do some of the visitors feel morally obligated when writing the feedback of a bad stay? After all, when talking about the review scores, it seems to be a numerical value, whereas the sentiment of a comment is free text, and we wondered whether or not this would be a future thing to investigate. This then led us to our conclusion, and trying to conclude can the sentiment of visitor comments be an accurate gauge on prediction if a listing will be negative? Unfortunately, through our detailed analysis, we also ran some R-squared correlations, and that came out as very low, which unfortunately means that there is no strong correlation between the comments and sentiment, which, as previously mentioned, raises the question regarding human interaction with the reviews. And perhaps this is something that needs to be looked into so that we can try and get better commentary to match what the actual scores are saying. During this project, I have learned a lot about dealing with large data and trying to amalgamate multiple data sets. I also utilize different mapping techniques and try to analyze these, and I'm trying my best to actually find a positive result, which actually unfortunately was not successful in this. It was also the first time I used VADA to try and interpret and convert sentimental information, which actually was successful in its implementation, but did not actually lead to a successful conclusion. To improve next time, I would look at trying to continue and improve advanced modelling, and also introduce some advanced machine learning modules to try and see if there was any correlations that I missed. I would also look at feature engineering so that I could explore additional features such as whether price is a factor or whether or not, though if we go by the word map, the location is a factor. And lastly, to conduct a deeper sentiment analysis to see whether or not my theory is actually relevant. Thank you very much for your time. Open for any questions. Please leave a comment.